Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, homeland of the Corellian tradition. And this is Midday with Reverend Don, and with me is my guest, Krys Copeland, joining us from the Netherlands. Hi, Krys.
Hi, Reverend Don. Great to be back.
And today we'll be talking about new things at Corellian Publishing. We hope you're having a wonderful week, as you know. If you follow Midday with Reverend Don, you can type your questions or comments into whatever platform you might be watching on, and they will show up here in our chat room. The chat room is not on the screen today because we have a guest, but we will see the chat room and can respond to you. And so, Krys, what all is going on in the world?
Well, in the world, that's a bigger conversation now I want to have. But we do have
Well,
a few things going on with Corellian Publishing. As you know, your book is expected to be published next week if everything goes well. It
yes.
has had a couple of delays, so I apologize to everyone for that. I was a little over enthusiastic with setting Reverend Don's deadlines, so given his your volunteer work with Gaia Thrift as well, and all of the other things that you're working on. This is just something that took a little bit longer.
It
Um,
took a little longer than anticipated. Hello to Nikki Dodd in the chat room.
Hi, Nikki. Good to see you. But it looks like the final draft is going to be something really spectacular. I'm very proud of this one. I think it's going to
I
turn out
am
very
too.
well. So people
I
will be
think
very
people will be
pleased.
very pleased.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, could you tell us a little bit about how you're doing with going through that final draft and some of the things you're thinking about adding in and taking out?
um, well, but it's definitely more adding in than taking out.
It's usually how
Uh,
it
part,
works.
yeah, part of the final draft is making sure that everything reads as clearly as possible.
Mm.
Not always my strongest suit. And hello to Renee in the chat room.
Hi, Renee. Good to
Um,
see you.
but making sure that what I'm trying to say is understandable, but also I try to make sure to put in as much about it as I can. And for example, I was working on the section on amulets and talismans because we have a whole chapter on amulets and talismans as part of the book. And one section I had been talking about the Greek tetradrachm of Athena that had an owl on the back and how this was used as a talisman in ancient Greece. And should you be lucky enough to have one today, it would still be a great talisman to keep the energy of the goddess around you for wisdom and guidance, which were some of her strong qualities. But I also decided to add into that some more modern uses of coins as talismans as well. And there's the famous superstition: you see the penny, you pick it up, and all the day you have good luck, which is probably the most common use of a coin as a talisman today. Um, Hello to Steve Taylor in the chat room.
Hi, Steve. Good to see you.
So I mentioned that, and we were talking before how if the coin happens to come from the year of your birth, it's even luckier. If you find a random dime, that represents the influence of your ancestors around you, and you want to pick that up and use it as a talisman to strengthen that influence. And then, of course, the other talisman about money is the first dollar that either a person makes or a business makes, keeping that, maybe framing it or otherwise memorializing it as a talisman to draw more dollars. And hello to Martin in the chat room. It's good to see you, Martin.
Hi, Martin.
Uh, it used to be that it was more likely to be the first coin rather than the first bill when dollars were still commonly coins. But it's a long-standing belief. And my grandfather had his first dollar that he had earned. It was a silver dollar, which he used as a talisman, as the fob on his watch keychain.
Oh, nice.
And I still have that today. And but these are some of the things you might not think about in terms of how people use talismans and common uses of talismans. So that's an example of the kind of thing I go in and make sure is there, even though I might not have thought of it the first time. And the other thing is, sometimes when you're writing, you're not always as clear as you really want to be. So you need sometimes to go back and make sure that you're understandable. My favorite example of that comes from the First Degree book, which I wrote not quite 30 years ago. And it talks about how it's traditional to make altars out of doors, by which I meant, yes, traditionally altars have often been built outside. But no, I used the term out of doors, and people were writing to me saying, what kind of door should I use? And I've been mindful since then of trying to make sure that you're not going to take this differently than I mean it. Although an altar made out of a door is kind of a cool thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I have known people to do that in multiple ways. Lady Alyssa, the first priestess of the Corellian tradition, has an ancestor altar, um, not made out of doors, but out of windows in a right angle to one another, which I believe comes out of African traditional practice. But it's a beautiful altar, and it shows how this sort of thing can be used in a very symbolic, metaphysical sort of way. But that's a different book.
Yeah.
Uh,
We'll get to that
in
one.
the future. Reverend Don's Book of Altars.
Perfect. Have you
So,
considered what you would like to work on next after the Stones book is published?
well, we've talked at different times about Reverend Don's Book of Energy.
Hmm.
The idea of a Book of Altars doesn't seem like a bad idea to me.
Absolutely.
Um, the idea of finally doing the autobiography doesn't seem like a bad idea to me. But you want to talk about something that will take some time. That would be a long term project, um, complete with the constant question: do I really want to tell that story, or do I want to put that in the posthumous autobiography? But that it's on the list though, because um, it's been demonstrated that there's an interest.
Yeah,
When I was younger, I didn't really think there would be. Um,
I'd be curious to see in the chat what people would like to see most next.
Absolutely. If you have a recommendation for the next book, put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Speaking of delays, we have a number of people who have pre-ordered the Tarot of Hecate, and I'm going to be sending out a letter to those people here presently, because it's been woefully delayed, and we're still waiting on it, which means they're still waiting on it. And I just want to reassure them it's still in process. But it's been long enough. If anyone wants to cancel their order, of course we would understand that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do order them from China, and everything is kind of up in the air at the moment. On top of the fact that we've had a harder time dealing with this company than we ever had in the past.
Yeah.
Um, but they will be coming.
And if
So,
anyone knows of a very good printer, maybe based in the U.S., that could help us out with making card decks at an affordable price for our
yes,
patrons, then yeah, we would definitely be interested in those tips. So if anybody has any ideas, send those our way, please.
yeah, but has to be a company willing to do
Small
small
batch.
orders,
Yeah.
because and we're not going to be doing 10,000 of them.
Yeah.
It's not in the cards.
We
So
have a very niche market, so which I rather enjoy. We have a lot of a small group of very dedicated fans and
mhm,
followers of what Corellian Publishing puts out, and
that's
it is steadily growing each and every day. So if you want to help out with growing our readership, feel free to share our website or links to our products or anything that I post or Reverend Don posts or any of our volunteers post on our social media. Feel free to share those with pagan groups that you know, with pagan friends who might be interested, just to get the word out and help make sure that we have lots of different eyes on our products, and hopefully eyes that can benefit from the products that we offer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. In addition to discussing that, I wanted to bring up the fact that uh, speaking of delays in shipping, my copy of Witch Wars has just arrived, and I'm very happy with how the cover art looks as the way it's printed, and the coloration on it is quite beautiful. So yeah, I'm just very happy with how it turned out. So if you ordered yours, you'll get something like this, and this guide has actually come in pretty handy the last few weeks. I've been pulling it for reference to help out with.
Hasn't it just?
Yeah, yeah. As most of you know in the chat, Witchcraft TV was recently hacked uh, by someone who willingly admitted that they hacked it and then sent me all the evidence that they hacked it, which we were able to use to shut her out of the account completely and make sure she no longer has access. But it's really important to, especially as pagans, because we do have so many attacks, not only from outside but also even from within, on occasion when
Well, that's
ego
the thing, yeah.
yeah, ego comes forward and someone makes that their priority instead of serving the community. And yeah, we have issues like this. So I wanted to share a few tips from the book for people to use right now with helping secure their information and secure whatever archives you have, pagan elder archives, or anything else that you find that you hold dear, family photos, legal documents that you may need to keep safe. First things first, have both a digital copy, several digital copies stored online in different places through different servers. I recommend using Dropbox, OneDrive. Google Drive is my favorite for this. You can also look into some bigger packages with other companies, but that would get you started. In addition to that, I also recommend a physical backup. You can get a terabyte external hard drive or a thumb drive and load your archives on there. But that's really, really important these days. Another thing that I want to mention is solar flares, because uh, if you have something that is electronic and a solar flare from the sun happens to hit that day, it can fry your electronics. They do make special bags, and you can find them on Amazon to put, like, if you know a solar flare is coming in or there's going to be extra solar activity, and it pops up on your news feed if that's going to happen, especially if you're pagan. We get those pretty regularly. But just drop your phone in that bag, drop your laptop in that bag, and you can zip it up, and it will hopefully stay protected during that. But it's just one extra measure you can do, because if a solar flare hits that equipment, it will stop working, it will stop functioning, just like our electrical grid will at the same time. So have those backups just in case.
Well, it's very, very important. We've been talking a lot about backing up information, especially for posterity. And
Yeah.
one of our big projects has been backing up our things. Now, a lot of our things we've backed up as we created. Um, our Corellian TV / Magic TV archives are mostly backed up. We want to make sure they're totally backed up. Um, but there have been other things that we've been
I
scrambling
think
to
that
do.
Reverend Don has rose. Okay.
Oh,
And I wasn't sure.
well, talk about timing. But although we backed up most of our video things as we were creating them, our live things we want to make absolutely certain are backed up. Our audio broadcasts we've been working hard to back up. They are all backed up at this point. And we encourage everyone to be doing this. And our project of the Ancestor House, which we'll be talking about in the next few weeks, has the maintenance of those digital and other archives, as well as physical archives, as one of its major tenets, one of the major reasons for doing it. We want to say hello to Scientific Spirituality in the chat room, who says, solar flares only affect electronics that are plugged into outlets.
That is true, the solar flare itself, but the EMP from it
Oh,
can fry electronics that are sitting out. So you can use static shielding bags, foam, bubble wrap, all kinds of stuff to protect from that.
yeah. The scientific spirituality went on to say, "You're thinking of an EMP."
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And Martin says the Witch Wars book looks very nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. I'm very happy with how it turned out. It's a beautiful cover design.
It is. It is a very useful book at this time with so much going on in the world.
Yeah.
It talks a lot about reputational warfare, um, and how to deal with things you might not immediately recognize as tactics.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the first thing we started with when the situation went down. Um, our priority was to make sure that there people in the community knew what was going on, had the full truth, were able to look at the information, the evidence themselves. We documented every single communication from this hacker, and we made it public to everyone. So
Mhm.
that was really important. First things first, be transparent. If someone is attacking you online, the easiest thing to do to get rid of it is just tell the truth, even if you have
Mhm.
messed up on something. And in Harold is an incredibly wonderful human being, but he did make a mistake on this. Not an intentional one, not a cruel one, not anything that he planned on, but he didn't have the material backed up,
Mhm.
and that cost some of our pagan archives. Now he has since corrected that; it will not happen again. So he learns very quickly, and that's wonderful to see. So yeah, just make sure that you're also following those procedures. Um,
Well,
and
this is something that you learn through experience.
yes,
But if you don't
absolutely,
want to learn it through experience, trust
learn from
our
our
experience.
mistakes. Yeah, learn from our mistakes with this. Um,
Um, we've always been careful to archive our work. We have bags full of audio tapes from the '90s in the radio programs that we did, that include interviews with people no longer living, as well as others who are still living. But we were talking about audio interviews with Olivia Robertson. We have a number of video interviews that you can go look at right now in our Magic TV archives. But we also have audio interviews, but they were before the Pagans Tonight days. And they were from before the internet mostly, because once the internet was here, we interviewed her on video. But we have a number of other interviews with her from earlier than that that eventually have to be transcribed. But right now they're a physical artifact that we have been preserving all this time. And when we talk about Ancestor House as being both a physical and a digital archive, this is part of what we're talking about. A lot of these things have not yet been digitized. Um, and it's important for us to be doing that and to be storing them not in the cloud, although it's perfectly fine, I guess, to have them there too, but to have them on hard drives where you can always access them no matter what might happen online. Um, because who knows that that cloud might not go away at some point, or go through some unexpected change. If you had asked me a couple of years ago, I would have thought Blog Talk Radio was going to be there for a much longer time, and that there was no need to worry about the longer term storage of those files because they'd be available there. But they no longer exist as they formerly did.
yeah.
And
Scientific
yeah,
Spirituality has an update for us in the chat, and thank you for this information and clarifying. I also double checked myself because I had misspoken about the solar flare causing the EMP. It is a solar storm that can cause an EMP, so it's a different phenomena, but it can still cause EMP issues. So, yeah.
however, it's much more likely um, for our stations to be hacked intentionally by a person than by anything like that. So be
Absolutely.
aware of this, and be aware that it can come from within our own community, which is what happened to Witchcraft TV, could theoretically come from outside our community. The biggest hacking we've experienced, I couldn't even tell you the year now, but it was a SQL injection that took Witchpool down for weeks, 20 years ago, something like that. And not only Witchpool, but hundreds of different websites online. And because of the excellence of our programmers, we actually were able to get Witchpool back up and running before some of the multi-million-dollar companies got their sites back up and running.
That's great.
But all kinds of things can happen, so be prepared for them. And think about posterity. Realize, particularly if you're doing something like this, that it's not just important for the moment, but important for our history and the history of our community to maintain this for the future. And we want to say hello to Harold in the chat room.
Hi, Harold. Good to see you.
And to Lolan in the chat room. And Lolan says, I would be interested in looking through your archives to see some of the interviews with the legends of witchcraft who are no longer here with us. Perhaps you might consider a memorial archive list. Maybe we should do that.
Yeah.
Right now, if you go to the YouTube page and you search for them, many of them you will find, but not all of them, because we weren't doing necessarily the best tagging at that time. But this is part of what Ancestor House is about. And so over this next year, I do think we will have much more of that coming into being. And, we have some really remarkable things. One of the things of which we have a surprising number are memorial programs when people have died. We have one at the time of Lady Olivia Robertson crossing over. We have one when Carl Weschke crossed over, Isaac Bonowitz, and a number of other people. We were able to bring together at least some of their friends and acquaintances to honor them online in a memorial, which is, in its own way, a very historic thing, because in some cases people told stories at those events that hadn't been told elsewhere. And that's an important thing. And so we're very proud to have that sort of thing. We also have a number of rituals that we have covered over the years. I've mentioned in a previous program, we did the blessing ritual that the Washington, D.C. pagan community did at the time of the Obama inauguration to clear out old energies to make way for the new. I don't know for certain that there's anywhere else you could find information about that now. But we captured the whole thing on video and interviews with the people who did it. We have video from a number of things over the years where our people were able to videotape. We have from the 20th anniversary of the St. Louis Pagan Picnic, the ritual they did for that. We have the Chicago Pagan Unity Night. And Harold says, Ancestor House is cutting edge. Very happy someone is stepping up to energize this. It's a lot of work. Well, yes, it is. Thank you, Harold. But, we often talk about how we seem to have a generational disconnect in our community because people haven't adequately maintained the history. And we need to do better with that for the next generation. One of the interesting conversations we had in the last couple of years was with people from the Buckland Museum. And it was mentioned to them that I have photos from the Lawrence Museum. And they were very interested in that. As far as I know, I may be the only person who has photos from the Lawrence Museum of Magic and Witchcraft, which was open for 50 years, from 1937, I believe, to 1989. And but try to find a person who knows about it now, and that's rather hard to do. In fact, a lot of people Um, I've heard people remark that they thought it was just a legend that was out there. But I knew the family. I'm distantly related to them. Caroline and Lydia Beckett were close friends and I think cousins. And Lydia Beckett was the ancestress of the Lawrence household and the actual founder of the museum, together with her daughter Atalo. And um, toward the end of the museum, my magazine, The Wheel of Hecate, did a story on it with photos. And like I say, I don't know that there's any other comparable collection of photos in existence. And that's one of the archives that we are preserving. Now, I do know there are other photos from the museum because they were frequently in the newspapers. But I don't know where you'd go to find them now, other than the local library in Galveston, Indiana. Um, but these records are important for the future.
We have a comment here from Scientific Spirituality. Nicholas Schreck has been influential in the occult community. He has stated that humans alone can't influence the world. Do you agree or disagree with him? Oh, I think we influence the world quite a bit, sadly.
Well, what I would say is it depends exactly what he was saying, whether I would agree or disagree.
Oh, I misread that.
Um,
Human will alone. I apologize.
Human will.
Human will. Yes.
Well, but the thing is, when we say human will motivates our actions.
Mm-hmm.
Our actions certainly influence the world, but I think that we mean metaphysically here.
Yeah.
And I would say that will alone, I'm not going to say it has no effect, but it's when you combine it with energy that it has the effect, the big effects. And I believe that it can influence the world. And I believe I've experienced that many times. So I would have to say that if I understand what he's saying, that I would not be in agreement with him. But I also leave open the possibility that I might not quite understand the point.
Yeah.
Um,
And yeah, I agree with that assessment of it. As far as I don't know that human will exist without further action, because in order to will something into existence, there has to be an outward exertion of energy for that. Like if I want a cup of coffee, I have to go and get that cup of coffee. I can't just, will it here. But oftentimes people, well, if someone is willing something, then they probably follow that up with action. So it's really hard to isolate human will by itself, separate from the actions, because they're so interconnected.
one of the comments that I made many years ago on Reverend Don's vlog on this subject is the idea that things do not manifest casually. Because there was someone who asked a question about random thoughts, and in the New Age movement, there was a lot of thought that your random thoughts could be very damaging and so forth. And my comment was, if it were that easy to manifest something, we would all have won the lotto many times. It is entirely possible, in my opinion, to manifest it, but it requires focus and energy.
Or at least buying that lottery ticket. So.
Well, that too. Although I will say I've found lottery tickets occasionally, although not winning ones. But you never know.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, yes, you must buy the ticket if you want to win the lotto. Lolan says, I haven't been able to move anything yet by pure will alone, but I will keep trying. Good for you, Lolan.
An excellent comment about that scientific spirituality. That's
Yeah.
one to think about for sure. And now that I understand it, yes, I agree. Will alone won't do it. I just don't think there's often will alone that is observable anyway.
On the subject of moving things, and I talked to that on the vlog a couple of times because people ask about it. I have seen this happen. And I've known people who could manifest it, but usually not at will, or at least not repeatedly. I've known people, for example, who will have an effect on electronic equipment, including I knew a person once who could make the television turn on, but not necessarily every time. Um, I've seen people who can make lights flicker, but not really on a repeatable level. But I therefore believe it to be possible, but I haven't seen anyone who's truly a master at it. Most people I've known who have this happen have it when they're in a state of emotional upset, and it isn't really by will. But there have been a few who could do a little bit. Um, Now, scientific spirituality says, from my research that I've done, it's pretty clear that human will alone can influence the world, which I would agree with. This is in regard to scientific studies. I do believe that the focus of will, meaning will backed by energy, can influence the world. In fact, I believe it almost always does in ways of which we're not conscious. I think that every moment we're alive, we're influencing the world in ways we are not conscious of. When we study magic, we learn to be conscious of it. Part of this, however, is that you have to be very careful, particularly when you're not conscious of it, of your crossed wires, your shadow work, so to speak. Because one of the things that our will can do to us is cause us to manifest not what we desire, but what we fear or what we expect. It's like the famous example that if you're trying to do a piece of magic for the ideal job, but in your heart you don't believe you can have that job, your magic will not be successful because you have a crossed wire there. Now, scientific spirituality says watch videos of Nina Kulagina. And she could move objects with her mind. I will go look at that. Like I say, I've known people who could demonstrate this to some extent, but usually not in a perfected manner. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's someone who could. But I regard that as being one of the areas where we have a lot of growth. That is a potentiality. With that, I see we've come to the end of our half hour, so we want to take a moment for a word from our sponsors. Why? Because we love our sponsors. And here we go. Ready to unlock the secrets of the universe? Join me, Rev Don Lewis, for my metaphysical and magic auctions at Gaia Thrift at whatnot.com. Discover fascinating artifacts, mystical crystals, and rare and unusual books that could change your life. Don't miss this chance to bring a little magic into your world. Rev Don's Metaphysical and Magic Auctions, where the extraordinary can become yours. And thank you to our sponsors, Equinox Learning Hub and Rev Don's Metaphysical and Magic Auctions. And thank you for joining us. Thank you, Krys, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And let us close with our prayer as we always do. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives. We rejoice in this walk we walk together, and we ask you to help us to manifest in the world those things we wish to see, to be the change we wish to see, to create the better future we wish to see. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you with great love, and knowing you are always with us from respect, we thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always. May you be blessed now and always, and I'll